In the name of our great God, Satan, Lucifer, I command thee to come forth and bestow these blessings upon us.
Anton LaVey, with famous Hollywood stars, around satanic altar, a list member's text, Church of Satan symbols mixed with movie studio imagery. Marilyn Monroe, the lost innocence and the dark circles born. Norma Jean Mortensen, the image Marilyn Monroe projected was one of carefree, childlike joy, a platinum blonde embodiment of pure fantasy. The woman who became the definition of the American desirable icon spent her life battling profound feelings of abandonment and loneliness, stemming from a childhood marked by instability and institutionalization. This underlying fragility made her uniquely vulnerable to the manipulative forces lurking at the edges of Hollywood. She desperately sought belonging, a family, or at least a powerful figure who could protect her from the industry's cruelties. The reality behind the public smile was that in her later, most unstable years, Monroe found herself circulating among some of the darkest, most esoteric circles in California. These weren't the glittering A-list parties of the studio era. These were gatherings characterized by intellectual experimentation and occult dabbling, often fueled by recreational substances and a general disdain for convention. Writers, philosophers, and certain influential figures in the arts community were exploring forbidden philosophies, including those of the burgeoning counterculture movement that would later embrace LaVey. Monroe's tragedy, by the 1960s, was that she had become disposable to the power brokers who had manufactured her fame. Her desperation for control over her own life, for intellectual recognition, and for genuine love led her to those who promised secrets and power outside the studio's iron grip. The emotional toll of constantly being perceived as a commodity rather than a person left her susceptible to any group that offered radical acceptance. There are well-documented accounts of her associations with individuals who claimed a spiritual connection to black magic and the esoteric. These connections were subtle: a guest at a party, a brief liaison with someone who possessed these interests, but they placed her precisely where predatory influences could exploit her greatest emotional weaknesses. Specific rumors suggested she attended gatherings where the hosts discussed the philosophies of Aleister Crowley, seeking empowerment through self-deification, which was the precursor to LaVey's own doctrine. The stars who surrounded her in those final, chaotic months were known for their fascination with mind control and the idea of achieving absolute personal will, concepts dangerously close to the core tenets of the emerging Church of Satan. These were not harmless parties. They were environments where spiritual and psychological boundaries were routinely disregarded, preying upon the desperation of a woman who felt she had nothing left to lose. Her increasing erratic behavior and demands for freedom were often met by those dark circles with a promise of occult protection, a fatal delusion for someone so profoundly wounded and vulnerable. The very people who promised her knowledge and control only succeeded in further isolating her from the few protective influences she still had, deepening the tragedy. The pervasive rumor in the wake of her tragic passing in August of 1962 was not just political conspiracy, but a sense that she had fallen prey to forces she couldn't understand or control. The narrative that emerged in some circles was that the purity she was forced to project publicly created an irresistible target for those drawn to darkness privately. Her life became a canvas for the projections of every powerful man who sought to possess her, and when the studios were finished, these shadowy figures moved in. In a final, sad irony, the very vulnerability that had made her a star also made her a target for the hidden, exploitative fringe of Hollywood. Monroe's story is the ultimate emotional price tag of the era. The cost of demanded innocence is often exploitation, and she paid that price in full. The whispers suggested that she was unknowingly part of a larger, much darker game being played by the powerful figures who truly ruled Hollywood's fringe. Her passing marked the end of her persona, but for the darker side of Hollywood, it was merely the beginning of an era defined by spiritual rebellion. Monroe's vulnerability drew her to danger, a pattern repeated by others seeking to break free. But the next star we examine took a far more active, defiant approach to embracing the forbidden, transforming herself from a glamorous bombshell into the self-proclaimed satanic priestess of Hollywood, making her connection not fleeting rumor, but public spectacle and documented association. Jayne Mansfield, the Pink Palace, the Satanic Pastor, and the Fatal Curse. Jayne Mansfield was the successor to Marilyn Monroe, a star who embraced the bombshell image with far more calculated gusto. She built a life around excess, spectacle, and a notorious home known as the Pink Palace, which became a beacon for her flamboyant lifestyle. Yet, Mansfield was not the simple commodity the studios sold. She possessed a formidable intellect, with an IQ score that reportedly rivaled the genius level, and she spoke 5 languages. This combination of glamour and restless intelligence made her seek attention and notoriety far beyond the usual studio publicity stunts. Her rebellion against Hollywood's conventions was explicit, and it led her directly to Anton LaVey. Mansfield was not the only A-lister to kneel at that altar. The shadows stretched to stars like Sammy Davis Jr., a tragic ingenue named Sharon Tate, and even the formidable Marlon Brando. Mansfield's association with the Church of Satan began in 1966 and was well documented. She frequently visited LaVey at his famous Black House in San Francisco, and, according to many accounts, became romantically involved, with him openly embracing the title of Satanic Priestess. The media went wild, publishing photographs of her being initiated into the church by LaVey himself, a spectacle that instantly vaulted the Church of Satan into the national consciousness. For Mansfield, this was a perfect form of defiance, a way to shock the conservative society that judged her. It provided a powerful counter-narrative to the Catholic morality of her estranged husband, Mickey Hargitay, and positioned her as a dangerous, liberated symbol of the counterculture. LaVey, in turn, used her celebrity to gain enormous, unprecedented exposure for his fledgling church. Mansfield was the living embodiment of the Church of Satan's rejection of Christian constraints, an actress openly celebrating physical gratification and ambition. The association gave her a specific, terrifying notoriety that no mere magazine cover could provide, separating her from the fading starlets of her generation. She even placed the Church of Satan's trademark, inverted pentagram symbol, prominently on her Pink Palace, a permanent public declaration of her allegiance that shocked the Hollywood establishment. This public embrace of the forbidden was, in effect, Mansfield's last, most desperate attempt to control her own narrative and remain relevant in a rapidly changing Hollywood landscape. She actively incorporated the satanic aesthetic into her public appearances, wearing black leather and embracing a defiant, dangerous sensuality that left no room for the studio's pristine illusions. However, the spectacular nature of their relationship led to an equally spectacular tragedy. In 1967, Mansfield was involved in a relationship with her attorney, Sam Brody. According to accounts from the period, LaVey became enraged, publicly claiming that he had placed a powerful curse on Brody, an unfortunate threat Mansfield allegedly tried desperately to have him lifted. Soon after, Mansfield, Brody, and their driver were involved in a devastating automobile collision on the highway outside New Orleans. The horrific nature of the accident shocked the public and immediately fueled the persistent, chilling rumor that the disaster was not simply a tragedy, but the fruition of LaVey's dark pronouncement. The widespread rumor specifically stated that LaVey's curse was meant only for Brody, but resulted in the passing of Mansfield as well, highlighting the terrifying unpredictability of the forbidden arts. The tragedy was so complete that the lingering myth of the curse continues to overshadow her genuine contributions to Hollywood cinema. The enduring power of Mansfield's story is that her connection to the occult was not a footnote, but a central, flamboyant detail of her final years. The Pink Palace, once a symbol of glamorous excess, became, in the public imagination, a gateway to the inferno. The cost of her spiritual rebellion was absolute. Her life was tragically and violently ended, cementing the dangerous myth that there were genuine consequences to the forbidden allegiances she embraced. Her defiance was a public spectacle, and her passing was interpreted by many as a divine, or perhaps demonic, reckoning. Mansfield's defiant, self-destructive choice to embrace the forbidden was a dramatic spectacle. But the next star, facing the intense pressure of being a minority performer in a deeply separated system, saw his association with the dark circles not as rebellion, but as a desperate bid for protection and ultimate acceptance. Sammy Davis Jr., the Rat Pack's secret initiation, and the Red Amulet. Sammy Davis Jr. was a supernova of talent, a singer, dancer, actor, and comedian. But in the tightly controlled world of mid-century Hollywood, he was perpetually an outsider. As an African-American and Jewish performer, he faced professional limitations and social exclusion that his Rat Pack peers, Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin, never experienced. He was accepted on the stage, but often barred from the hotels and social clubs where his friends relaxed. He endured countless indignities, often having to wait outside while his colleagues enjoyed separated venues. This lifelong struggle for acceptance, coupled with his search for spiritual grounding, led him down numerous unusual paths. He had converted to Judaism after a near-fatal car crash in 1954, but his search was far from over. In the 1960s, as the boundaries of acceptability began to stretch, Davis Jr. became fascinated by the anti-establishment ethos and the promises of personal liberation offered by LaVey and his Church of Satan. Accounts detail that Davis Jr. not only met LaVey, but was invited to the infamous Black House. The purpose, as Davis Jr. would later explain, was a bizarre initiation ceremony that involved a nude woman and a dark promise. For Davis Jr., this was a powerful act of defiance against the oppressive moral code that had always contained him. If mainstream society judged him for his race and religion, he would embrace a philosophy that rejected that society entirely. The Church of Satan's doctrine of self-worship and physical freedom was, for a man so long controlled and constrained, an intoxicating promise of complete autonomy. He felt that embracing Satanism was a way to reclaim the dignity and power that the established Christian society had denied him throughout his career. It was the spiritual equivalent of kicking down the door of the separated establishment that had tried to keep him out for decades. His decision was a radical inversion of his public piety, seeking strength in a philosophy that glorified the very desires and ambitions the conservative world sought to suppress. This philosophical shift was deeply personal. Davis Jr. had always felt like a prop in a white man's world, and LaVey offered him the chance to be the central deity in his own. The most visible sign of this association was the satanic medallion, or amulet, that Davis Jr. was often photographed wearing around his neck in the late 60s. The public reaction was one of stunned confusion and outrage. How could this universally beloved mainstream entertainer align himself with something so sinister? For Davis Jr., it was an existential choice, a psychological armor. The amulet became a symbol of his willingness to accept any label, any association, if it meant liberation from the hypocritical system that defined him by his skin color rather than his immense talent. He definitely wore the medallion on talk shows and at premieres, seemingly daring the public to reject him further, claiming it gave him a sense of power. The contrast between his cheerful on-stage persona and the dark, defiant symbol he wore was a constant source of media fascination and controversy. Though he later distanced himself from the church, the message of radical self-acceptance resonated, suggesting the lengths he went to find an identity that transcended race and religion. The notoriety gained from the association provided him with a new layer of psychological immunity against the relentless scrutiny of the press. The true cost of this chapter was the emotional dissonance it created. The public idolized the jovial, tap-dancing entertainer, but behind the scenes was a man desperate enough for power and acceptance that he would seek it in the shadows. He paid a high price in public controversy and personal turmoil, but the association ultimately allowed him to stake a claim on a unique, defiant identity, proving that no societal box could contain him. The emotional burden of being an outsider was so great that the embrace of the ultimate outsider, Satan, felt like a reasonable exchange for true, unbridled self-acceptance. If these revelations about Hollywood's greatest icons and their private bargains have captured your imagination, we invite you to continue this journey through cinema's true history. Please consider subscribing to Golden Age Files. We are committed to uncovering the complete, complicated humanity of the stars who built our dreams, and your support ensures that these vital, emotional stories keep coming to light. Kenneth Anger, the occult visionary, and Hollywood's unholy archives. While stars like Mansfield and Davis Jr. flirted with LaVey's sensationalism, there was a figure whose association with the occult was not a public spectacle, but a lifelong, dedicated spiritual and artistic pursuit. Kenneth Anger was not a star in the traditional sense, but an avant-garde filmmaker and writer whose singular, groundbreaking work served as a cinematic archive of Hollywood's darkest spiritual history. He was the vital, intellectual bridge connecting the history of ceremonial magic with the rock and roll decadence of the 1960s. Anger openly identified as a follower of the philosopher Aleister Crowley, adopting Crowley's dictum, "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law." His short, visually stunning films, such as Scorpio Rising and Lucifer Rising, were not mere movies. They were visual rituals saturated with symbolism, biker culture, and explorations of forbidden desire. Anger's vision was to expose and celebrate the darkness he believed was inherent in the pursuit of the American dream, and specifically, the Hollywood myth. He often described his filmmaking process as a form of invocation, channeling powerful esoteric forces onto celluloid. His work was a deliberate counterstatement to the sanitized morality of the studio-era pictures, utilizing forbidden imagery to unlock deeper psychological truths. His films featured real-life counterculture figures and musicians, weaving their decadent lifestyles into his dark cinematic tapestry. He sought to reveal the true gods of Hollywood: power, ambition, and excess, which he felt were the real-world manifestations of occult forces. He viewed his camera lens as a magic mirror, reflecting the chaotic, forbidden energies that truly powered the industry's glamour. His most important contribution to this narrative was his scandalous, yet historically essential book, Hollywood Babylon. The book was a lurid, semi-factual compendium of Hollywood's most protected secrets, detailing everything from substance misuse to allegations of coerced physical relations and studio cover-ups. Anger saw these vices not just as gossip, but as the inevitable fallout from the Faustian pressures of the studio system. He believed that the industry was fundamentally corrupt, and its secrets were the price paid for its power. He dedicated the book to the ghosts of the silent film stars, whom he felt were the first great victims of the destructive Hollywood machine. The book, which became a notorious underground hit, revealed the dark underbelly that the publicists and fixers had worked so tirelessly to conceal for decades. His work provided the intellectual framework for understanding why so many beautiful, talented people might seek solace in the philosophies that celebrated self-indulgence and the rejection of societal taboos. Anger presented Hollywood itself as a vast, continuous occult ritual, fueled by celebrity desire and public consumption. This controversial history became required reading for those seeking the real story behind the fabricated myths of the silver screen. Anger's personal life was intertwined with the very fabric of the occult fringe. He drew major figures into his orbit, including members of the Rolling Stones, who scored his films. He acted as a cultural historian, chronicling the transition of Hollywood's darkness from the silent film era's secret orgies to the open decadence of the 1960s counterculture. He provided the intellectual and artistic justification for the star's descent into the forbidden, suggesting it was a necessary artistic or spiritual release from the commercial constraints of the studio system. The cost of Anger's relentless pursuit of this dark truth was social and professional isolation. He was an outsider by choice, a perpetual provocateur who was never fully accepted by the Hollywood establishment he relentlessly dissected. However, his warnings about the true darkness lurking in the shadows of Hollywood were soon tragically validated. He spent years chronicling the chaotic energies of the underground, energies that the Church of Satan both utilized and exploited. The very underground culture of defiance that Anger documented had a violent, chaotic fringe. And in the summer of 1969, that chaos exploded. Sharon Tate, The Perfect Bride, and The Summer of the Scapegoat. The shadows that Kenneth Anger filmed in his esoteric visions tragically materialized into a terrifying reality in the summer of 1969, forever altering the perception of Hollywood's innocence. Sharon Tate was the definition of the era's burgeoning innocence. A beautiful rising star, married to the brilliant counterculture director, Roman Polanski, and soon to become a mother. She was the perfect symbol of the new Hollywood dream, which made her subsequent tragedy so devastating to the collective American psyche. On the evening of August 9th, 1969, Tate and 4 others were brutally killed by followers of Charles Manson in her Benedict Canyon home. The subsequent trial and the sensationalism surrounding it transformed a horrific multiple homicide into a national satanic panic. The media, fueled by the era's anxieties and the shocking nature of the crime, immediately, and often wrongly, sought to link the Manson family to LaVey's Church of Satan and to the general occult movement that had been quietly bubbling in Hollywood for years. The sheer violence of the crimes was something the American public desperately needed to categorize as the work of the devil rather than purely human madness, thereby externalizing Hollywood's hidden moral decay. The meticulously crafted image concealed the sheer terror and the profound shift in morality that this tragedy represented. The public struggled to reconcile the violence with the glamour of the victim and her prominent circle. The media narrative suggested that Polanski's bohemian, boundary-pushing lifestyle and his associations with the fringe of the art world had somehow attracted this darkness. The rumors of black masses, recreational substance use, and occult experimentation in the Polanski circle were wildly exaggerated and often untrue, but they perfectly served the public's need to explain the inexplicable. The tragedy acted as a definitive, bloody punctuation mark on the 1960s, signaling that the promise of unrestricted freedom had brought forth unholy consequences. It was the moment the dream of the counterculture turned into a nightmare, and Hollywood, the capital of dreams, was forced to confront the violence it had fostered in its shadows. The fear was primal. If a rising star in her own home was not safe, then the moral corruption of Hollywood had truly seeped into the foundations of American society. The widespread fear transformed the physical location of the crime, 150 Cielo Drive, into a permanent symbol of Hollywood's cursed side. The tragedy served as a horrifying warning that the line between counterculture experimentation and outright destructive chaos was thinner than anyone had dared to imagine. Tate became the ultimate tragic scapegoat, the image of innocence destroyed not by a random act of violence, but by the forces of evil unleashed by Hollywood's moral decay. For the general public, her passing cemented the myth that Hollywood was fundamentally evil, that the beautiful people were truly in league with the devil, and that the price was paid in blood. The emotional weight of Tate's story lies not in any true association with the Church of Satan, but in the power of the myth it created. Her passing was interpreted as the fulfillment of the bargain. The darkness that figures, like anger, documented, and Mansfield embraced, had arrived at the doorstep of the beautiful and the famous. The tragedy did more to popularize and terrorize the idea of satanic Hollywood than any self-proclaimed priestess ever could, and the wounds from that summer remain unhealed in the culture to this day. Truman Capote, the black and white ball and the hidden darkness. Moving away from the physical violence of the 1960s, we enter the world of Truman Capote, where the exchange with the forbidden was intellectual, decadent, and ultimately just as fatal to the individual. Capote was a literary genius whose true subject was the dark, complicated machinery of human behavior and desire. He moved through the world of the elite, the swans he both adored and dissected, with a perpetual sense of being an outsider, an observer with unique access to their secrets. Capote's most famous social event, the Black and White Ball of 1966, was more than just a party. It was a grand, exclusive, and almost ritualistic gathering. It was an elaborate attempt to both celebrate and possess the social order he spent his life chronicling. The restrictive mask and costume code, the rigid guest list, and the almost religious fever surrounding the event suggested a ceremony of status and power, a kind of secular black mass where social standing was the deity. Capote positioned himself as the grand puppet master, controlling the temporary morality and behavior of the most powerful people in America, a godlike role he clearly relished. He carefully chose his guests, knowing exactly which social fault lines he was highlighting and exploiting merely by whom he invited and whom he excluded. The ball was a fleeting exercise in godhood, where Capote alone decided who was worthy of salvation and who was cast out into the social darkness. He was obsessed with the sheer manipulative power required to sustain an elite, glittering facade, mirroring the darker controls exerted by the studio system. His elaborate party was a symbolic act of defiance, a moment where the old social guard submitted to his rules, affirming his power as the ultimate cultural orchestrator. Few understood the truth that lay beneath Capote's personal fascination with the occult, particularly as it related to true crime and the pathology of evil. His groundbreaking non-fiction novel, In Cold Blood, explored the psychological darkness that drives individuals to homicide. This fascination was reflected in his social circles, which became increasingly dark and manipulative as his fame grew. Capote's intellectual curiosity wasn't passive. It led him to seek out and engage with people who exemplified the most destructive, amoral elements of the elite, the very black mass of human manipulation. He was drawn to people with dangerous edges, attracted by the drama and the secret life that power afforded them, blurring the line between observer and accomplice in the creation of darkness. His constant presence at every elite party and his role as confidant to the very rich meant he gathered secrets that could destroy careers and reputations, giving him a power over his peers that was almost supernatural. This power, built on the confidential sins of his friends, became his greatest professional asset and his gravest personal liability. The true cost for Capote was a protracted, agonizing self-destruction. As he moved from observer to participant, his ability to chronicle the darkness destroyed him. His final, unfinished work, Answered Prayers, was meant to be the ultimate expose of his powerful friends, detailing their most private sins and manipulations. When excerpts were published, it was seen as the ultimate betrayal, and his swans swiftly and utterly cast him out. The social excommunication was total, leaving the once omnipresent writer utterly alone, a victim of his own toxic brilliance. Capote had treated his friends' lives as raw material, and in the end, they treated his reputation as material to be permanently destroyed. He became convinced that the darkness he had pursued for so long had finally turned inward, consuming his prodigious talent. He spent his final years haunted by the realization that his relentless pursuit of the darkness had cost him everything: his friends, his reputation, and his ability to write. His descent into substance misuse and mental anguish became a public spectacle. He had made a bargain, trading genuine human connection for access to the secrets of the powerful. And the powerful exacted their price by isolating him entirely. Capote was consumed by the very darkness he sought to chronicle. His story, a painful literary morality tale about the corrosive power of secrets and the price of intellectual dabbling in the forbidden. Brigitte Bardot, the pagan goddess who defied the moral code. If Truman Capote's defiance was intellectual and nuanced, Brigitte Bardot's was physical, unapologetic, and immediate. She was the ultimate European bombshell who, in the 1950s and 60s, came to represent a level of personal freedom and autonomy that terrified the American and European moral establishment. Bardot's image was the antithesis of the restrained, pristine desirability demanded of American stars by the studio system. She represented a raw, unfiltered desire that religious leaders and moral crusaders were quick to condemn. Her international fame, launched by films like And God Created Woman, made her a global phenomenon, but she was simultaneously the target of relentless moral outrage. Critics often labeled her image as pagan, unchristian, or overtly devilish. Her carefree, often nude portrayal of women in film, coupled with her equally free and complex private life, marked by multiple marriages and public affairs, was interpreted by the conservative establishment as a sign of moral collapse. She was often explicitly described as the anti-Mary, a symbol of sin that needed to be contained. In many countries, films featuring her were heavily censored or banned outright, a direct response to the powerful threat she posed to social order. The Vatican itself reportedly condemned her influence on Catholic youth, solidifying her status as a cultural villain. She became a lightning rod for the entire West's anxiety about female liberation and the erosion of traditional values in the post-war era. Her power was perceived as inherently corrosive, capable of dismantling the moral foundations of society simply through her gaze. Her rejection of the traditional feminine constraints was so absolute that, in the eyes of the moralists, she could only be an agent of the infernal. The painstakingly created image concealed the sheer pressure of being forced into this role as a global symbol. Bardot did not ask to be the spokesperson for personal revolution, but once cast, the constraints of the moral world were weaponized against her. She was targeted not for any actual association with the occult, but simply for embodying a life philosophy that Anton LaVey's church preached: self-gratification and the rejection of repressive morality. To the moralists of the era, the result was the same. Any break from traditional norms was inherently satanic. Her choice to prioritize her own desires over the expectations of motherhood and marriage was seen as the highest form of amoral rebellion. She faced public boycotts of her films, organized by groups who viewed her career as a direct assault on the sanctity of the traditional family. The constant judgment and scrutiny led to profound periods of depression and several attempts to escape the unbearable pressure of her image. Her personal cost was an intense, lifelong persecution by the press and a profound disillusionment with fame. She retreated from the spotlight entirely in the 1970s, rejecting the celebrity apparatus that had celebrated and then judged her. She became a vocal advocate for animal rights, dedicating her life to a cause far away from the human hypocrisy of Hollywood. Her final, abrupt retirement at age 39 was a desperate final act of self-preservation, signaling her complete rejection of the public spotlight that had tried to control her soul. She traded the glamorous but soul-crushing role of global desirable symbol for a life of isolation and single-minded purpose, finding peace only in the complete absence of human judgment. Her voluntary exile was arguably the greatest act of rebellion against the fame machine, succeeding where others had failed or passed away. Bardot's story serves as a crucial reminder that in the Golden Age, one did not need to physically join the Church of Satan to be branded as its apostle. To defy the prevailing moral code, to live authentically outside the constraints of the studios and the church, was enough to be labeled an agent of degradation. Her life was an open revolt, and the moral establishment treated her as a fugitive from grace. We hope these revelations have allowed you to see these iconic figures with a deeper, more complicated sense of empathy. We are always dedicated to bringing you the factual, yet emotionally compelling, stories that truly shaped Hollywood. We would love to know which of these revelations surprised you the most, and what other Golden Age Hollywood topic you would like us to cover next in the comments section below. Tallulah Bankhead, decadence, debauchery, and the Southern Gothic secret. If Brigitte Bardot was the European symbol of defiance, Tallulah Bankhead was the quintessential American eccentric and a walking monument to Golden Age decadence. A stage and screen star known for her magnetic personality and low, husky voice, Bankhead represented a type of free spirit that the studio system struggled to contain, even in its most controlling years. Her persona was built on shocking candor, open bisexuality, and a legendary capacity for substance consumption. Bankhead's life was a sustained act of self-destruction and rebellion. She famously lived by her father's, Speaker of the House, William Brockman Bankhead, advice: "Daddy told me to take the train." The joke, of course, was that she took the train, and everyone else's, right off the rails. She lived a life of constant party and excess, defying every convention expected of a Southern lady or a Hollywood actress. She embodied the philosophy of live fast, pass away young, consuming alcohol and pills at a rate that shocked even her hardened contemporaries. Her scandalous behavior was often so outrageous that publicists realized they couldn't suppress it, so they simply marketed her as the unpredictable, decadent exception to the rules. Her theatrical persona was so large and consuming that it masked the profound, quiet sadness of a woman who struggled to ever be truly seen outside of the chaos she created. She openly flaunted her relationships with both women and men, an extraordinary act of defiance in an era where the production code rigorously censored such realities. She was one of the few stars who seemed to relish destroying the pristine image that Hollywood tried to impose, turning her private life into a public spectacle of defiance. Few understood the depth of the void this relentless decadence was meant to fill. Her extreme behavior, the constant search for stimulation, and the shocking things she said and did were interpreted by many of her associates as an ongoing, frantic effort to evade deep-seated loneliness and psychological pain. Her self-destructive appetites and her disregard for personal safety were so profound that rumors circulated that she had made a bargain with the forbidden, that the price of her unique, magnetic stage presence was a total lack of control over her own life. Whispers in New York and Hollywood suggested that she traded her personal well-being for the magnetism she exuded on the stage, a magnetism that captivated but also consumed her. She often referred to her vices as her crutches, admitting privately that she needed the chaos to sustain the vibrant, dangerous persona the world demanded of her. Her public persona of careless hedonism was, in reality, a shield against the intense pressure and the expectations of her powerful political family. The cost was chronic insomnia and a constant need for external affirmation, which she found in the adoration of strangers and the attention of the press. Her famous phrase, "I'm as pure as the driven slush," summarized her defiant and ultimately self-aware relationship with the moralizing public. She never officially joined an occult church, but her lifestyle perfectly embodied the physical and egotistical philosophy of LaVey's Satanism, decades before it was formally codified. She lived a life without moral constraints, seeking immediate gratification at all costs, a philosophy that proved fatal to her health and peace of mind. Her willingness to be utterly unfiltered and amoral in public was itself a form of secular black magic, holding the attention of millions through sheer, dangerous charisma. The emotional cost of Bankhead's defiance was that she was unable to ever truly find peace or stability. Her final years were marked by profound isolation, health issues related to her excessive lifestyle, and a persistent inability to maintain meaningful, lasting relationships. She was the star who chose freedom over happiness, and in doing so, offered a clear warning about the emotional emptiness that could accompany total, unbridled self-indulgence. Her story is the Golden Age's deepest, self-inflicted wound. Marlon Brando, The Godfather's Family Curse, and The Island of Secrets. We save a colossal figure for the climax. A man who redefined acting and whose own complex life became intertwined with the esoteric, not through public membership, but through personal tragedy and the media's need for an ultimate explanation. Marlon Brando was more than an actor. He was a cultural force, and his private life was defined by as much emotional chaos as his public persona was defined by genius. Brando sought escape from the spotlight and the oppressive structures of Hollywood, eventually retreating to his private island, Tetiaroa, in French Polynesia. There, he pursued an erratic interest in indigenous cultures, philosophy, and mysticism. This search for spiritual truth, far from the scrutiny of the American public, fueled endless speculation about his private practices. He studied the beliefs and rituals of the Polynesian people, seeking a spiritual connection far removed from the hypocrisy and commerce of Los Angeles. He was often criticized for turning his back on Western civilization, but he maintained that the Polynesian cultures offered a more authentic, less destructive path to understanding human existence. His isolation was not just geographic. It was a philosophical barrier he erected against the world that demanded so much from his talent and gave so little peace in return. He reportedly engaged local spiritual leaders in long discussions about curses and the transfer of powerful dark energy, reflecting a deep personal worry about the psychic toll of his fame. He seemed desperately concerned that his immense personal power was not a gift, but a liability that could spread destruction to those closest to him. What the public didn't fully comprehend was the depth of the personal suffering that defined the second half of his life. His family was ravaged by tragedy. His son, Christian's involvement in a homicide case in 1990, and his daughter Cheyenne's long, agonizing battle with mental illness, culminating in her ending her own life in 1995. The public watched in stunned horror as the private chaos of the Brando family unfolded, a chaos that seemed disproportionate to the magnitude of his genius. The irony was painful. The man who had perfected the craft of conveying inner turmoil on screen could not prevent it from consuming his own household. The immense psychic cost of bearing the weight of his talent and fame was tragically transferred to his vulnerable children. The actor who brought such intensity to his roles was utterly powerless to save his family from the emotional wreckage his fame had created. The media, always seeking a clean narrative, seized on Brando's eccentric retreat to his island and his interest in the mystic to suggest a family curse. This rumor, which took on a life of its own, served the same purpose as the satanic panic. It explained the unexplainable tragedy. People whispered that Brando's phenomenal talent, his unparalleled position in cinema, had been purchased through a dark, intergenerational pact that was now exacting its price on his children. His interest in the esoteric harmlessly intellectual or spiritual in private, was weaponized as evidence of a deeper, forbidden allegiance. His isolated island paradise was recast in the public imagination as a kind of fortress, where he practiced dark arts that inadvertently brought ruin upon his own bloodline. This terrifying narrative suggested that the true devil was not in a San Francisco church, but in the uncontrollable, self-destructive nature of inherited fame and genius. The emotional cost for Brando was the guilt of surviving his own children and the inability to shield them from the consequences of his overwhelming fame and personal choices. He was forced to watch as the ultimate price was paid not by him, but by the two people he loved most. His story is the most profound and sorrowful articulation of the Dark Pact, the highest artistic achievement bought at the expense of family peace. We appreciate you spending this time with us to explore the complete, complicated humanity of these iconic figures. If this journey into Hollywood's hidden history has resonated with you, please show your support by liking and sharing this video with fellow classic film enthusiasts. The Final Reckoning, the high price of Hollywood's Dark Pact. We have traveled through the smoke and mirrors of Hollywood's golden age and peered behind the elaborate facades constructed by the studio system. We have seen how the promise of unparalleled fame and the pressure of maintaining a pristine public image drove some of its brightest stars to seek comfort, power, or rebellion in the darkest, most forbidden corners of the counterculture. The stories of these 10 stars, from the quiet exploitation of Marilyn Monroe to the public defiance of Jayne Mansfield and the heartbreaking family tragedy of Marlon Brando, all share a common theme: a profound personal cost. In every case, the studio system acted as the demanding, moralizing force, and the embrace of the dark was the ultimate desperate act of artistic or emotional liberation. The studio system demanded moral perfection and suppressed any true reflection of the human experience, the complexity, the desires, the trauma. Stars who felt trapped by this system found refuge in the philosophies of people like Anton LaVey, which promised liberation and empowerment through the rejection of conventional morality. For some, like Sammy Davis Jr., it was an act of defiance against a separated world. For others, like Kenneth, it was an artistic truth. For many, the result was isolation, substance misuse, mental anguish, and profound personal sacrifice. Imagine living like Jayne Mansfield, whose need for public spectacle led her to an association that haunted her memory. Or like Sharon Tate, whose innocence was tragically sacrificed, fueling a myth that destroyed her image after her passing. Or like Truman Capote, who gained the secrets of the powerful only to be destroyed by them. These were not merely actors. They were participants in a dangerous cultural experiment, testing the limits of public morality and personal endurance. The choice these individuals faced was often between psychological imprisonment within the system's lies or a desperate spiritual freedom that carried its own terrifying hazards. In hindsight, the Church of Satan offered a codified rebellion for those who had already been pushed to the moral brink by the demands of their careers. The hidden history of these stars teaches us that the greatest tragedies often occur when the public demands a lie and the celebrity is forced to live a forbidden truth. As these stories have emerged over the decades, they force us to re-evaluate what we think we know about the Golden Age. The stars who shone the brightest were often those most tormented by the double life they were forced to lead. Their artistry did not diminish when their secrets were revealed. If anything, their achievements become more remarkable. The passion, the pain, and the relentless drive that defined their performances were, in many cases, fueled by the very private struggles and forbidden affiliations we have explored today. The immense effort required to maintain a perfect illusion while carrying such profound personal burdens is perhaps the greatest tragedy of the Golden Age. The secrets they kept hidden are now the very elements that grant their legacies a more profound and enduring sense of human realism. We understand now that the glittering premiere was merely the first act. The real performance, the one that cost them the most, was the one they gave behind closed doors, striving to maintain the illusion while negotiating the high price of their personal, often dark, pacts with fame. The stars of Hollywood's Golden Age shine no less brightly for having been revealed as complex, flawed, and deeply human. In knowing their full story, both the glamour they projected and the shadows they explored, we gain a deeper, more empathetic appreciation for the individuals who built the world's most enduring dream factory. Thank you for watching and for helping us celebrate the complete, complicated humanity of the stars who built Hollywood's golden dreams. Until next time, this is the Golden Age Files, the E.